If I had to pick one investment today that by 2024 could feasibly increase 100x in price, Cardano ranks at the very top of my list. I am here to tell you with some of the highest conviction I have ever felt with an investment that ticker symbol ADA is going to create millionaires in the years to come. And today, I'm here to tell you what you can most likely expect to see by the end of the year. I'm going to tell you why Cardano isn't just going to fill the pockets of astute investors. We're not talking about a lot of empty hype here. No, Cardano is going to change the world, and you need to know about this before Cardano skyrockets in the months ahead. Let's get into it. Hey guys, what's up? Adam here from Clever Trades. Now, Cardano is the impeccable combination of an amazing proof-of-stake blockchain platform combined with a dream team of developers. Think of Cardano as a leap forward technology-wise in contrast to Bitcoin or Ethereum. There's a reason, in fact, why ADA is often referred to as the Ethereum killer. Now, I know with Ethereum 2.0, they will be similar to Cardano, but they will not be superior. Make sure you stick around to know why even after a major upgrade, Ethereum will still be inferior to Cardano. There's also a reason why there is a community of over 445,000 globally that agree that Cardano will have better technology than Ethereum. To understand why this is, you have to understand the issues that plague some of the most popular cryptocurrencies. And more specifically, I'm going to discuss the problems with Ethereum. So hold on to your butts. Now, the founder of Cardano is Charles Hoskin, and he's actually one of the original founders of Ethereum, so that is why both Cardano and Ethereum have similarities. Ethereum was actually the first cryptocurrency to create smart contracts, but it's an absolute nightmare. The biggest issue with Ethereum, without going deep into a discussion about its blockchain technology, is that it's insanely expensive. I can best describe its absurdity using a gas analogy, which is especially befitting today considering the lovely gas prices we are seeing everywhere. But let me break it down for you. The Ethereum network is like a shared car. When a contract wants to be driven by the shared car, the car uses up fuel, which you have to pay the driver for. How much gas money you owe depends on how far you had to be driven and how much trash you left in the car. But that doesn't quite explain it, because that sounds reasonable and a whole lot like using Uber. But it's more like you get in the car, drive a block, and there's a gas fee. Roll down your window and there's a gas fee. Ask the driver to change the song and another gas fee. You simply have to pay every single time you use it. To make matters worse, with more passengers than drivers, the cost of transportation essentially skyrockets. To break this down further, what I'm describing as gas is actually referred to as Gwei, which is a small measurement in Ethereum, a transaction fee, that pays for its use. And therein lies the big issue. Gwei has a market price which is determined by the demand for ETH. So as ETH gets more expensive, so does Gwei. So even to do just the tiniest thing is extremely expensive. With Cardano, however, their smart contracts enable utilization without any intermediary. The contrast of that is proof of work. That's Ethereum's consensus model. With that, there is an intermediary necessary, the driver who gets all of the gas fees. And with Cardano, their consensus model is referred to as proof of stake. There's no driver to pay. Now, an issue all cryptocurrencies have to contend with is scaling. You can think of scaling as a way of competing with Visa, MasterCard, Amex, etc. And essentially all cryptocurrencies have this issue. With Ethereum, there are around 20 to 21 transactions per second. Compare that with Visa, which has around 65,000 transactions per second. The credit card companies are able to do this cheaply with what is called a private data system. They are essentially the gatekeepers, and they can change the rules however they see fit. In contrast to that is the major goal of all of crypto, which is to remove any intermediary and provide a decentralized world where entities are not governed by any centralized governance model. It's a beautiful world where technology simply works by itself. And if you don't know already, that means that crypto networks are open and vulnerable to attack. Security is an extremely big deal. That's why private databases allow things to be conducted at scale and cost effectively, because anyone inside the network can freely go about their business. They are not limited to the rules of decentralization. But Cardano is the solution that fixes this. Remember I said this wasn't just going to put profit into the pockets of astute investors? I said Cardano will change the world. And by our very own nature, Humans are insanely greedy. Cardano uses greed to make their network exceptionally strong, decentralized, and secure with a concept they call game theory. The people who actually verify these transactions are not miners, but instead are stakeholders. Just stop and think about it for a second. If you had power over a financial system and could vote on its direction, you would have every incentive to run your system fairly so that it increases in value. Because after all, everything goes extremely well for everyone as long as you get yours and I get mine. Which means the people that verify transactions are the token holders themselves. And I know that sounds like there's a bunch of people verifying transactions, but to make a long story short, it's actually a democratized voting system. Imagine being able to influence positive catalysts for Cardano and being able to influence negative catalysts as well, which means you could prevent that cryptocurrency from being affected by that negative catalyst. But Ethereum 2.0, let's talk about it, because I think there's a lot of people that are about to get the rug pulled out from underneath them. Now, just because Ethereum has a massive market capitalization and a lot of market share, well, this shouldn't convince you that ETH 2.0 is going to have it all figured out. I have worked with software for years, and as someone who has designed software, I have been faced with the challenge of working with antiquated systems. I've worked closely with development teams that were working with a crappy foundation and worked tirelessly against the grain for the sake of modernization. In other words, if you start with a poor foundation, you cannot build a proper skyscraper. And that's what Ethereum essentially is. It's a skyscraper with a lot of issues. The foundation is cracking and has leaks. There is structural damage that needs heavy intervention. The developers could very well correct all the issues with Ethereum, sure, and they probably will, but here's the thing. It is much easier to build a structurally sound skyscraper from scratch than it is to improve what was only meant to be a proof of concept. Ethereum was only meant to prove that smart contracts work, and you know what? It's accomplished that goal very well. Well done. Now, like I said, I realize that Ethereum 2.0 is probably going to fix some of these issues I've already discussed, but I want you to stay with me because I'm going to dissect why I still believe even after Ethereum 2.0, Cardano is going to be the leader. Even when Ethereum 2.0 is fully released, they are still going to have massive scaling issues. On the other hand, with Cardano's scaling solution Hydra, Cardano can theoretically scale up to 1 million transactions per second. Ethereum, however, will only be able to scale up to 100,000 transactions per second, and they're not going to be able to do so anytime soon. In fact, it could be 2 years or more until Ethereum is able to work out the kinks with their scaling issues. But that's 1/10 of what Cardano will achieve in the next year if all goes according to plan. Cardano is already making way with the largest blockchain deployment ever with governments such as Africa. And if you really think Ethereum is so special, well, just know that with Cardano's ERC20 converter, they have the ability to clone any of Ethereum's programs and move it over to Cardano. Now, as far as my personal predictions go and what I think is going to happen here in the short term, in the future, well, I definitely think that with the launch of the Alonzo testnet, if all goes according to plan, I think you are going to see a very interesting disruption in the market caps of other crypto. Once people start realizing that this is a pretty big deal and the proof is in the pudding, Cardano is going to start flipping other market capitalizations. And those who are in fact infatuated with Ethereum like to argue the first mover advantage. But in technology, as history shows, being a first mover has disastrous consequences. Now think back a few minutes ago when I was talking about the skyscraper. Now imagine that skyscraper full of people. Being a first mover gets you that population, but over time that population gets extremely dissatisfied, and with weak technology, competition is almost always the one to make improvements, and with that comes stolen market share. Google wasn't the first search engine. In fact, Yahoo had the largest market share before Google won dominion over search. Citrix had the largest web conferencing software, but they were absolutely eclipsed by Zoom. Then we can look at internet browsers like Mosaic, Internet Explorer, and Netscape, they all failed. And now Cardano is most likely the contender to dethrone Ethereum, and with that will come disastrous consequences for investors who hold investments in other cryptocurrency. I believe that by the end of the year, we could probably see around $10. And if everything goes to plan before the end of the year, just think for a second about Cardano. If it gets to $10, well, look at its market capitalization right now. What do you think is going to happen to Ethereum or Bitcoin? Just think about that. Because if Cardano is this game changer, this world changer, this Ethereum killer, there's going to be a pretty big upset in the cryptocurrency market. So it's just something to be aware of, and something that I'm extremely bullish on. As you can tell, I'm not a crypto expert. There's people that know far more than I do. I just think that it's worth my time and yours if I share my honest opinion, and I've done a good amount of research to really fuel this conviction of mine to know that I think Cardano is definitely going to make a lot of people wealthy. That's just my honest opinion. So comment below with your thoughts and questions. I'd love to hear from you. That is all the time I have for you today, and thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Take care.